Hey gang, welcome back to another session on Illustrator goodness. In this little video we're going to be looking at the type tool and some of its little tricks and tips and things to look out for and how to gain a little more control on your text that you use in these projects. Right off the bat, let's just take a look at where it lives. It is the letter T in your toolbar. It's the type tool. If you click and hold, depending on what version of Illustrator you're using, you'll see different results. Here we have 7 different types of type tool that we can use, and we're just going to leave it with the first one for now, the type tool. It's also T on your keyboard. That's a handy shortcut when you're working quickly. I'm just going to click once and type something in here. Type tool makes type. Imagine that. How crazy. Couple things you need to know about working in the type tool. When you've clicked once and you have that blinking cursor and gives you the freedom to type, as soon as you're done typing, it still sits there with the blinking cursor. You have to figure out how to make your next step here, which, sometimes, probably most of the time, will be just getting out of the type tool. The easiest thing to do, which is what I do most of the time, is just get the selection tool. When you get the selection tool, it takes us out of the edit mode and just selects the text that we are working with here. And since it's an object, just like everything else in Illustrator, when it's selected, all of its attributes are here along the top option bar. Its fill color, color, stroke weight, opacities, so on. And then we get into type specifics, like what font you're using, the style, the size, and so on. So what I'm going to do just right now is I'm going to increase my size so we can actually see it. If I go to the font size little area here, I can click and do it, step by step, or I can open that up and choose from some preset sizes, which caps out at 72. 72 pretty much works for me right now. This text that I have selected, if we go back through in detail now, has a solid color, so it can be any color you want. That should be a no-brainer. You can also add a stroke to it, and this is okay sometimes, and sometimes it's not the best way to do it. I can show you a better way in a little bit, just because by default the stroke behaves in certain ways that you can't have control over like you can when it's an actual path. So here are the text-specific areas. We have a character panel that pops up and gives us a lot more details than just the easy things that we can get to right here. So the font is the style of text that we're using, whatever you have in your computer by default or whatever you have loaded. I see I have chicken butt. So you can find different fonts online for free. You can pay for them. Please don't go that far because that can be excessive unless you have to in order to make a job complete and legal. Then by all means pay for that font or get your client or boss to pay for it. But anyways, choosing different types of typefaces here is just as easy as any other program where you'd be using a type tool. You can choose different styles depending on what's available for that different font. Some fonts don't have extra styles. They're just made to be one way, so that's not too uncommon. I'm going to make my size a little smaller. And then we jump over to paragraph. If I click on that, there's a paragraph panel. It has specifics on our alignment or justification, and then some other deals if you're dealing with a paragraph, which we're not. Right now I just have a single line, and we'll talk about that more in a second here. But here's some quick jumps to align left, align center, and align right. All right. In this case, I should probably align center, but it puts it off the screen because I clicked over here. So wherever I clicked, That makes it the center point. So then maybe just to get it into a happy place, I should center it using my alignment for the objects, which is what you have up here. Anytime you have anything selected with your selection tool, should be used to that. Okay, one last thing that you can do up in this control bar with your type is use this this envelope, which you can use as a warp or a mesh. More about that later, but if you click on it, it opens up the warp options, and you can see right off the bat it's defaulting to an arc with a bend of a positive 50%. If I bring that down a little bit, then we can start to see that, oh cool, I can actually like have my text go, you know, around an object, or have it give it a little more of a graphic characteristic. So different styles here. You can arc the lower or arc the upper, and you can do arches, bulges, flags, and so on. That's a wave. There's the flag. And these are all, you know, nice ways to help enhance your type elements. I'm just going to hit cancel for now and go back to where I was. So that is the most basic way to get text on your canvas. And I'm going to talk about something very quickly that's going to seem so elementary, but it is the process of just clicking to create an area for type. If I just click once, I get the blinking cursor and I can type my name. Okay, and then when I'm done, I'll get my selection tool and I can monkey with, you know, placement or whatever. The issue that so many people have with this type tool is that they'll get the tool and they'll just come down and without having control over their click, they might click and just drag a little bit, just like I did by accident, real quick, right? So here's this tiny little box, which is an area type box, saying that I want to put my type inside this box, but it's so small I won't have anything visible because I wasn't paying attention and I wasn't real careful about how I clicked, right? So let's get rid of that. What happens is if you click and drag, see now you can see that box being made. This is area text. So I let go, my blinking cursor is inside, and it goes as far as it can to those walls and then bumps down a line. This is how you would create areas of text for a body of work that needs paragraphs or, you know, more information than just a one-liner or a single word. It's a great tool. There's all kinds of neat stuff that I'll go over in the next video about area type. I'm just going to select that and get rid of it. So this standard type tool is good for quick one-liners, single words, you know, like something for a logo, or you know, whatever project you might be working on for just a headline, something like that, or just put your, you know, your name on something. So clicking once gives you quick access to simple type setups. If you needed to make it multiple lines, you can just hit return. So if I wanted to say in here, I was hoping to make it a two-line deal, type tool makes type. All I have to do is just hit the return and it kicks it down a line. At which point, the paragraph options would start to apply. You know, these things are now an option because I have more than one line. Speaking of, let's get into greater detail about the character palette. So the character palette has the font, the style, and the size, and all those things we know are up here in the control bar. But what it gets into in greater detail is your leading, and your kerning, and your tracking. And these are really important areas of typography to create a better flow of the symbols that we're dealing with in this you know, typeface font setting, right? If I look at something right now about this font, the way that it puts the T next to the Y, look how close that T and the Y are. I'll get even, come on there, computer. There you go. So look at this. we have they touch, right? Well, the Y and the P don't touch. The P and the E don't touch. And if I go through and I look at other ones, we're not touching. This is a very important thing to pay attention to while you're doing design with type. So this T and the Y are too uncomfortably close. So we can do things by giving them more space between the characters and the character palette, like using either kerning or tracking. Kerning is very common for typography artists and designers. Tracking makes a little more sense for people who are just getting started. Tracking is that space. So if I increase that value up to 20, I'm getting a little bit more of a comfort zone between the T and the Y. If I hold down Shift, I can go at increments of 10, and so maybe at 30 it feels a little more appropriate based on what the rest of the other letters are doing. I also notice the M is close to the A, so you just select that M and you'd go in there and increase that tracking, give it a little bit more space, and when we look at this together, you go, oh yeah, that really works. Type tool makes type. I'd have to come back and fix this T and the Y. But the great thing about these computers, I can just say, hey, no, come here, you. Come here, T. I can copy that T and I can select this one, hit paste, and it just gives me that other attribute of tracking for the T. So that is part of the goodies that you're going to find in the character panel. The other thing is your vertical scale and your horizontal scale, your baseline shift, and then your rotation. So these are things you can do to the words or the letters individually that will change their appearance. Please stay away from the vertical and horizontal scale unless you absolutely have to. Each typeface or font was created by a designer to be strong in its basic appearance. They were made to be the weight and the height and all of that by a designer on purpose. If you want a font that is fat or tall, we'll go find one. Go to dafont.com or any of these other free font sites and get something that fits what you need, because as soon as you change a font's vertical or horizontal scale, you are compromising that letter form's integrity as how it was designed to live by the artist. Okay, there's my little rant there. So let's say if I had this T and it was bigger, but I wanted to make it so that the top of the T and the top of the Y were at the same level, then I would use baseline shift. And I'll get somewhere about there. Hard to tell, I'll have to move it over just so I can see it better. Boom. So there's something cool. You can change where the baseline for a letter resides. So I lowered the T so it can be bigger, but still has that common top horizon line. But now it runs into my M, right? So this is where we get into leading. Ooh. Leading is the space between lines. So since I have two lines here, I can go, open that leading up so that it's not running into the T anymore. But I think that's pretty poor design. What I would do is I'd probably say, all right, here we go. Let's take this bottom line and let's lower it in its size, and maybe I will nudge it over a little bit. At this point, I'll make it a little bit bigger. And I'm nudging it by hitting space. I'm kind of cheating. But now if I take that leading, and pull that up, I can kind of tuck the makes type up into that T. but the T is not quite big enough, so I'd select it and I'd come back to my character palette and I'd say you need to be bigger, maybe like that. Then I have to deal with this baseline shift again, and somewhere right around there it looks pretty good. Type tool makes type. So I'm already starting to get into specifics of these various letters to create some sort of design. You know what would be actually kind of cool is if this exclamation mark was, you know, similar to the T and kind of bookended this thing with two big letters on each side. That would be really exciting. So there are some basics to your type. One last little rant and rave I want to have. Typography and text in Illustrator is the only place you should really do it when you're doing design. Don't do type in Photoshop anymore. Promise me that. Right now I want you to hold your pinky out and pinky swear with me that you will not use type in Photoshop anymore. And then everyone is going to promise everything they got that they will never design in a word processing program like Microsoft Word. Now that you have the skills to use Illustrator, this is where all text and type should happen. You're learning how to go back and forth between Photoshop and Illustrator and some other programs. This is when you need to understand about workflow and why you would use one over the other. The reason you're going to use Illustrator instead of Photoshop is because the type in Illustrator is vector-based and stays vector-based once you export it out of Illustrator's environment. Photoshop has a vector type tool, but as soon as you save it as anything, it loses all vector information and rasterizes it. So it is raster, means you can't scale it up and maintain its beautiful integrity. You know that everything else in Illustrator has that capability. The same thing applies to its text. If you're going to do a CD design, get your artwork all prepped and ready in Photoshop, and then bring it into Illustrator and finish the rest of the layout there. All your liner notes, all the copyright materials, the songs, etc. Do it in Illustrator. If you're making a book or a program or a poster, a flyer for whatever, get all your basic assets made in a program like Photoshop, collect your photos, make them look great, create the graphics, etc. if you need to, and then bring them into Illustrator and finish it here. Let all the typography happen in Illustrator. Promise me that, and you will promise yourself that you're going to be a better designer. And that is what is most important here. All right, thank you for listening. We'll catch you on the next one.